Alright, so by the time this video goes live, Doom Patrol will have already finished up its 13-episode first season on the new DC Universe app, and even before episode 2, I could tell you this show was something really special. Not just a great show in its own right, not just one of the best things DC has had its name attached to in a long time, but as far as I'm concerned, one of the finest comic book adaptations in all of modern memory. And to be fair, we are living in a golden age for comic books and superheroes making their jump from the paper page to the silver screen, but Doom Patrol, as I will try and explain throughout the course of this video essay, is something special, something you truly get the feeling that the people behind the show not only read the source material, mainly the Grant Morrison stuff from Volume 2, issues 18 to 63 from 1989 to 1993, but moreover than that, they truly understood the material and why the Doom Patrol, one of DC Universe's strangest teams, became such an endearing cult hit. But before any of that, let's start with the basics. What exactly is the Doom Patrol about? Doom Patrol tells the story of a dysfunctional team of superpowered individuals brought together by the mysterious and wheelchair-bound Niles Calder, aka the Chief. They live in a big mansion where they all hide away from the outside world that hates and fears them because of their appearance, their powers, how they act, and generally just for not conforming. If that sounds a little too familiar, like the plot of another much more popular comic book series, then it totally should. Just keep in mind that the lovable freaks of the Doom Patrol actually predate the Merry Mutants by a considerable margin, but let that just serve as a constant reminder that sometimes it doesn't matter who has a good idea first. You know, like the dry, nerdy, talky video essay on YouTube genre. No one's done that before, right? Now, when the series first began in the comics, it was much closer to your standard superhero fare. Colorful costumes, big fights with supervillains, that sort of thing. It's not until Scottish superstar and renowned sigil magic user Grant Morrison took over the book, as I mentioned previously, that the series really found its own unique voice. Morrison drew on his own personal love of secret societies, Dadaism, surrealism, cut-up literature techniques, as well as metatextual parodies of other popular comic book creations, building a book that really felt like nothing else on the shelves at that time, or really since, honestly. But don't take my word for it, listen to the man himself, why don't you?
The thing that I did in Doom Patrol a lot was to use the spell check function in the computer, and you don't really get this anymore. But I would just write in a nonsense word like scribbles and then ask it to suggest an alternative, and it would come up with something. So if you wrote a lot of nonsense words but with proper syntax and proper sentence structure, it would then translate it into this bizarre, just whatever word it could come up with to get as close as it could to the word gazvlupflitz. You know, and it would suggest something, so you ended up with this absolute run of really bizarre, disconnected, poetic images.
And I'm happy to say that while other TV adaptations might try and run away from these wonderfully out-there story and character concepts, the Doom Patrol embraces them with open arms. A lot of that is owed to the star-studded cast that is just so up for all of it, and their enthusiasm becomes truly infectious. This is, after all, the kind of show where what's happening episode to episode, moment to moment, isn't really as important as the emotional journey the characters are going on. You know how sometimes you'll say when watching a show, oh, that was a really good Focus episode? Well, Doom Patrol is basically just 13 really good Focus episodes all strung together.
I know in Doom Patrol it takes a real deep dive into the psyche of all of them. And, you know, it's a bit of almost just batty madness that goes on in the show, but somehow I think the fan base has found that it's really kind of comforting in light of all the batty things that we are living with in recent years.
With that out of the way, let's talk about the cast next, shall we? Late 90s blockbuster icon Brendan Fraser sees a hell of a career resurgence providing the voice and occasionally the pudgy body of Cliff Steele, a hard-drinking, hard-living race car driver whose family life was already falling to pieces before a tragic accident turned him into the human brain inside a metal shell known as Robot Man. Cliff, for all intents and purposes, is the audience POV character for the first first couple episodes. He's the newest resident of Doom Manor, and as such he's still shocked and freaked out by what's happening all around him, while everyone else has kinda sorta made peace with their lot in life a long time ago. His reactions are always right on the money too, I should add. Truth be told, when reading Robot Man in the comics, I always assumed that he would sound a lot more surlier than he does here in the show, but Fraser does a nice job finding a type of everyman angst for the character to live in.
Everything I could possibly say would be totally stupid as fuck. Hi, I'm your dad, but I died and I'm a robot now. I'm just a brain in a tin can, but hey, even though I've been robot non grata for 30 years and I don't expect you to like me and you certainly don't have to love me, but I just wanted to say, I'm sorry.
Cliff's journey throughout season 1 really involves him trying to feel again, an interesting premise given as a robot man he now feels nothing at all physically, so he's basically forced to get his emotional and mental state in order. Something that in his human form he let fall by the wayside way too often as he chased more carnal desires. One way Cliff chooses to grow is by becoming the begrudging friend and eventual sort of guardian to Crazy Jane, played by Diane Guerrero, who I am not ashamed to say was already my celebrity crush following her stint on Orange is the New Black, and while everyone in the show is great, Guerrero just kills it. With a performance for the ages as the damaged young woman with multiple superpowered split personalities, it's a mind-bogglingly complex and ambitious performance that if it doesn't see her become a megastar in my lifetime, well then I just don't know anymore. Jane's character journey mostly involves her dealing with a lifetime of abuse and abandonment by anyone or any institution that she was ever close to, or was it even her for that matter? That's all part of the big mystery. It's all very heavy, often very uncomfortable subject matter that any other superhero show would probably treat as a finger quotes very special episode, but with Jane, that's just her life, it's every episode. Now I mentioned before about her powers, and one of the best things the show is able to accomplish is to realize these abilities in a way that I don't think anyone ever thought they would actually see off the comic book page, like weaponizing speech bubbles for an example.
Auf Wiedersehen, motherfucker.
In fact, in some regards, Doom Patrol the show goes a step further than the comics even did by recontextualizing some of the bigger moments between Cliff and Jane, making her less of a damsel in distress type character and more capable of facing her own demons in probably one of the show's finest episodes that sees Jane venture into her own fractured mind to meet a bunch of her different personas. This is also just another great example of when the show plays with some really big metaphysical ideas. Next up we have Matt Bomber as the voice of and occasionally unburnt body of Larry Traynor, a military test pilot from the 60s who, after an accident, is fused with an alien light-based life form, turning him into the Negative Man. Larry also just so happens to be deeply in the closet, and before his brush with death feared his secret would get out. I don't think I have to tell you his character journey in the show is all about him coming to terms with things inside him that he can't control or suppress and will need to learn to embrace if he ever wants to actually heal and move on, both in the human sense and in the alien sense.
My life has been a nightmare. I had everything and you fucked it all up! You fucked it all up.
I should also probably note that in the original comic books, Larry wasn't gay. That's a new thing they invented for the show because, well, Matt Bomber, the actor, actually is. In fact, he took the part because he thought it would be a really great way to increase the visibility of gay superheroes in media. And he really proves in this role that he's a triple threat. He can sing, he can dance, he can act. What can't the man do? Now, you might be scratching your head and saying to yourself, wait, he's from the 60s, but wouldn't that make him way older? Yeah, the negative spirit keeps him young and helps him cheat death. In fact, cheating death is kind of one of the threads that ties all the different members of the Doom Patrol together, as well as creating an age gap and generation gap for the team to overcome on top of everything else. Then, of course, we have the other lady on the team and one of the Chief's very first recruits, diva actress Rita Farr, played by April Baldi. Her arc is probably one of the most understated in the whole first season. She battles with image and ego while also balancing some very dark secrets and wondering if she can even be called a good person, let alone be seen as anything resembling a hero. She's also maybe the most reworked from her comic book counterpart. There she was called Elastigirl and had stretchy powers. Here though, they don't really try and give her a name, which makes me think that maybe the Incredibles character of the same name had something to do with that. Also, she doesn't really stretch per se so much as she just kind of expands like the Blob. Lastly, we have Cyborg, who was not a member of the comic book Doom Patrol team. No, that honor went to fellow Teen Titan Beast Boy, but seeing as he was already on that Titans show, which the creators have gone out of their way to say is not in the same universe as Doom Patrol, and really thank Trigon for that. I will admit, as a stickler for comic book accuracy, I was against this idea for the longest time, especially because in the last decade it seems that Cyborg is on every team except for the one team he's actually supposed to be a part of, but I will happily say that this show's version of Cyborg made me eat those words. Without a doubt, this is the best version of Victor Stone Cyborg that's been written in literally years. You see, despite being the youngest member of the team, Vic is by far the most mature. He also represents traditional superhero thinking in a cast and a world that couldn't be further removed from anything that Superman does. He also is just, at the end of the day, a dude trying to live his life and recover from an accident that left him essentially the superhero community's answer to a multiple amputee. The writers also very cleverly end up borrowing Cyborg material from across a bunch of different comics to really help him feel like a more rounded character. His mother actually plays a huge part in his story now, actually being there during the time of his big accident. Vic's dad, Silas Stone, also isn't the normal cold and distant version of the character we see so often in other material. Here he's actually more of a stage dad, trying to micromanage every aspect of his son's life through the help of the Grid AI, which again, if you know your Cyborg and you know your Earth 3 stories, you know where that's eventually leading. What this does do is actually push Cyborg away from his father and closer to his cool uncle Niles. And let's talk about Niles, shall we? Because Timothy Dalton is such a goddamn treasure and so perfectly cast for this role. He's warm and fun when he needs to be, he's funny and weird when he needs to be, and if you know your Doom Patrol comics, he's a little bit sinister too, which plays into the ultimate finale. Much like the shark in Jaws too, Timothy Dalton's chief is in the show just enough to let his presence be known, but not to overshadow anyone else. You see, when Niles goes missing, the Doom Patrol has to get their act together and find him. It's a deceptively simple setup that allows for many deep interpersonal, soul-searching, and team-building styled episodes. It also means that the show is allowed to move from place to place at a breakneck speed, giving us all types of colorful supporting characters, like a sentient genderqueer street named Danny that helps people escape from bad situations by traveling all across America. Flex Mentalo, a man so strong he can change reality just with his muscles, and John Constantine's non-union counterpart. All characters that I never in a million years thought that I would ever see be adapted for television, let alone actually be done justice. Hell, even the original Doom Patrol lineup get a whole episode devoted to them. Yeah, this show is so good with canon, even it remembers the team that we're watching and following wasn't the first team. Then you got all the crazy villains of the week, like the Beard Hunter and even Animal, Vegetable, Mineral Man. Guess the show goes there too, why they even invent some of their own villains, like Ezekiel the Talking Cockroach, which FYI was an idea that got thrown out of the Supernatural writers' room, but that the writers here decided to recycle, to great effect, I feel. And speaking of villains, I'd be remiss if I didn't give much needed credit to Alan Tudyk as Mr. Nobody, the series' overarching bad guy who uses his reality warping powers to kidnap the chief, mostly so he can narrate at him and break the fourth wall constantly. I should also probably mention he does all this while also being the show's snarky, omnipotent narrator who, get this, dresses like an old-timey movie director. Humor and comedy, of course, are this show's secret weapon at the end of the day. By juxtaposing them next to all the darker, more serious stuff, it helps the jokes land that much harder.
Nothing. So we should work quickly. The Decreator is a product of faith, born from years upon years of blind, unwavering belief. Faith like that can only be fought with faith alike.
So we build a religion.
Now, the effects that create Mr. Nobody is just some places wherein you can see that a lot of money was spent bringing this weird and wonderful world to life. Then there's the music. Oh man, the music, from the haunting opening theme that accompanies every episode to the brilliant song choices, which include the likes of classic rock icons from The Doors, Pink Floyd, Bob Dylan, to more eclectic stuff like Beck, Echo the Bunnymen, even Cypress Hill, for crying out loud. But as great as the casting is, and the music and the effects, the deep lore cuts from the comic books, what truly sets this show apart from the pack is that the people involved truly understand what they were doing, what the heart of Doom Patrol is. A story about a team of broken people who come together, accept each other, and only truly become heroes when they learn to master themselves and be better people than they started out as. I'm not afraid to say this show is a true modern masterpiece and a perfect example of why, when it comes to making shows based on comic book properties, Hollywood should really take more chances on cult favorites like this one. And that's just season 1 for you, everybody. The show has already been greenlit for season 2, and with the show dropping reference to the likes of the Brain, General Immortus, the Brotherhood of Evil, no telling where it could go from here. Personally, I would love to see Animal Man drop by. Heck, get Grant Morrison in to do himself as a super meta cameo. So there you have it, everyone. Another video from me, Cape Joel. I hope you liked it, and if you were on the fence about watching Doom Patrol, I hope this inspires you to check it out, because I promise you won't be disappointed. Until next time, everyone, bye-bye.